This week on the Old School RuneScape Update, farming leprechauns and gardeners are updated before the community spoke. The community also spoke about clue scrolls and Pull 84. From clue stacking and skips to Zulrah and challenge mode chambers, we ask, is the community wrong? This is the Old School RuneScape Update, episode 72, recorded Saturday, April 12th, 2025. Polling clues. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Old School RuneScape Update. As promised, there is indeed a podcast here this week. Sirion, of course, is on vacation, but nonetheless, I have found somebody from the depths of RSB&B update history and the depths of RuneScape history who is going to help deliver this podcast to you. And his name is Alex43. Welcome, Alex.
Heyo. It's been a while. I'm the original old school.
It has.
The last time I was on here, RuneScape was old school.
That's right. That's right. Alex has been with the RSB&B community for years. He's been around back when we had forums. That was the main form of communication. He, of course, has also wrote back when we did the newspaper called RSB&B Informer, and is known for a myriad of crazy things that he has done in RS. One of them is the cannon parties. I don't know if that's one thing that comes up for you, but I always ask people, if people are to know you based on some crazy thing you did in RS, what would you tell them about yourself?
Well, I think one of the big things would be indeed the cannon parties. I initially started doing them back in RuneScape Classic times after buying a cannon, or at least the first part of a cannon, and realizing that if I set it up, go and grab another one, I could set up another one and basically like draw pictures and stuff if I do it really, really fast and use a lot of teleports and stuff. And that behavior, funny enough, carried on to when RuneScape 2 came out. That behavior carried on, but in order to mitigate it, they tried to set it up so that cannons were like 3x3 so they couldn't overlap, but their collision detection wasn't the best, and I found a way to set them up next to each other if I did it at a specific angle. And so basically did sort of like a top-down drawing of a whole bunch of things. And at one point I set up so many cannons that I basically created an entire fort around the fountain in Valador and made it look like we were about to have a war.
Yeah, and you know that is very eerie, given the fact that Valador is the place that people riot, and they put cannons up when it's time to riot. So
yep, I may have caused them to remove that rule. And RuneScape 3, you can't do that anymore. You can only set one cannon at a time, and same with the current version of old school RuneScape. So cannon parties, unfortunately, are a thing of the past. But
yeah. But
when I went to RuneFest, though, I did pitch that, hey, Jaggeds guys, you should totally bring that thing back so we can have cannon parties again. In fact, I had got a t-shirt custom made with all the pictures of my different cannon parties on it, and I wore it around the venue.
Oh my God, that is,
I make a statement.
I saw lots of interesting shirts and whatnot at RuneFest, but I don't think anybody would ever come to that level of that. So there you go, folks. That's a little bit of a peek into the mind of Alex43. But
I was wearing that t-shirt when I spoke to Maud Markerhart himself. We sat down in the bar and chatted.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Neat. Well, we have to chat. We have to chat this week about a number of things, and I'm very curious to get your take on them. But before that, just a note to everybody out there, if you want to see our show notes, if you want to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast listening service, head on over to update.show/OS. We're on all of the big ones out there: Apple, Pocket Cast, Spotify, and more, as well as, of course, YouTube at youtube.com/OSRS update. Okay.
Do it, or Shane will sick me on you.
Yeah, I'm good at sending Alex to go and extract things out of people. I remember doing that back in the olden days. We go back years, but
yep. Secret to how Shane got his level 99 farming.
Farming, yeah, that's what I want to talk about right now. The farming leprechaun and gardener changes that are in right now and are going to be removed come next Wednesday. What they have done is they have reduced the walk range of the gardeners and made it so that the leprechauns are now closer to the herb patches. And this is getting rolled back. This is getting rolled back on April 16th.
Oh, yeah.
What's your take
imagining
on that?
Well, first off, by reducing the walk range on gardeners, I'm imagining the J mods all running around with dragon warhammers and whacking their knees.
What do you think?
I mean, I don't know. Like the gardeners, I personally don't use the gardeners all that much.
No.
I just basically set and forget because I use ultra compost and stuff, and usually I get all my tools and stuff from one leprechaun at where I start things off. So really, it's just a simple kind of quality of life thing, being able to know where the guy is. But I use Runelight, and usually like gardeners and stuff, they're all highlighted in Runelight, so it really doesn't make a difference to me.
And that's the thing I want to get to on this, is that I think there's two issues with this. One, I think it's a horrible knee-jerk reaction by the community. Because like you said, this is a quality of life update. And apparently this is something that should have been pulled. And I mean, you can make the argument, I think, that it could be pulled, right?
Kind of, sort of. It just feels like it's such a minor change that it's almost kind of redundant to make it pulled. Like people are going to look and go, they're asking us about this?
Right.
You probably get just a mixed input, like, okay, moving on.
And they said in hindsight, they should have been communicated more clearly and likely pulled, as we do with other QOL changes. As such, we are reviewing our internal processes to make sure that these kind of updates are surfaced earlier and given the same visibility and scrutiny as other game changes. Did the community?
I mean, again,
did the community get this wrong?
The community gets everything wrong.
Okay, that's a very controversial take. I'm gonna have to have you expand on that a little bit more.
That's a joke mainly, but that's the whole point of it, is that a lot of times the community likes to joke around and do things wrong on purpose just to screw with the system and feel like they're powerful.
Do you think that's what's happening here? Or do you think there's actually legitimate grievances involved in this?
Well, if by experience at Wintertot has taught me anything, is that people love to troll and mess around and stuff, and usually the noisy people who actually proactively do this stuff are the ones that like to mess with the statistics and stuff like that. So oftentimes all the legitimate people don't even do the polls at all. So more often than not, whenever you get a poll on something like that, it's going to be the majority of them are going to be the people who want to mess around with the system.
And what I'm wondering from this is that if you take the leprechaun change and the gardener change, and if you were to poll it initially, would it have passed? That's the $1 million question. And I realize I use that phrase a lot here, friends, when we talk about that.
Another thing I find about polls is just so easy to just click the yes button and move on. I mean, by default, when we do a survey or stuff like that, we oftentimes, if we are lazy, we just click 555 all the way through, and then that's it. And we don't expand on any of that stuff. So the majority of poll goers are just going to go through the poll like, yeah, sure.
See, that's the thing.
There's a consequence to it.
That we've been wanting to look into it for a while, is that if you look at the polls, they have a very, very high success rate, right? Mm-hmm. The fail rate is incredibly low. And to me...
And again, that's because yeses are default. Like, we don't really think about it. It's like, whatever, this won't affect me, click yes.
And to me, the question I have is that, and somebody needs to do a comparative analysis on this, is what poll questions out there fail and why do they fail? I feel like there's always going to be an option to discuss this around the dreaded PvP, in that the community won't let pretty much most things PvP through, i.e. see Sandmaw and Wrathmaw, that those initially were not allowed to go through. So that's why I ask, is that if you pull these farming improvements initially, the leprechaun one station closer to the herb patches and gardeners no longer wandering as much, would these have passed initially? And then go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you were asking me the question there.
No, I was going to say, and then with that, would the community have got upset if they would have passed?
I think again, it's a combination of like the people who want to mess with the system and say no to basically everything that comes by because they don't like change or they like to troll, compared to like everybody else who just kind of defaults to yes because it's such an inconsequential change to the game that it's basically just going to be like any other poll. I think like it'll probably pass at about 85% or so.
Yeah. Okay. What would you have voted if they would have pulled this? I would have voted yes, because I think it's a good QOL change.
And again, I wouldn't have affected me in the slightest, and so I would have again defaulted to yes because that's kind of the default. I like it when things change, and I like it when Jagex are able to implement kind of easy little quality of life things. So it's like 51 to 49% for me, basically. It's like I just lean a bit towards yes because maybe it'll save me a tile whenever I do random farming trips. Very, very rarely because I'm not a proactive farmer. I usually just grow trees in the farming guild and kill the Hespori.
I see. Okay. And you know, it's too bad Siren's not here because both him and myself are very big on our herb runs, so this would have been a big thing for us. But
maybe I should entice Siren from my basement and let him join. Oh well.
Yeah, you should.
Later, I got stuff to do after this.
Autocast is no longer cleared when you don't have the level of runes to cast the selected spell. Again, you know, it's just something that I think makes sense to do. But the big other thing that came this week is the changes to the Poll 83 changes from Castle Wars to reduce AFKing in relation to the plaudits. They updated the crates and are now available for purchase again. They removed the coins and runes from them, and untradeable arrows and bolts have been added for use in Castle Wars, which I feel like is a nice consolation prize rather than, you know, just rewarding 100% AFKing in Castle Wars.
Yeah, I know, right? It's so hard to get around that because like Castle Wars is very, very old content and stuff, and needs a slightly more involving reward system, I think.
Yeah,
people actually want to play the game.
Yeah. And then
not just that, but there's also like much bigger contenders like Last Man Standing and Soul Wars, for instance, that kind of leave Castle Wars a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, I know
minor game.
I know from my own personal perspective, it was way easier to get a game of Soul Wars in leagues than it was to get a game of Castle Wars in this last one.
Oh, yeah, they had whole dedicated servers in leagues. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, because I was one of the very, very tiny percentage of people that chose Kandarin.
Love it. I'm also one of the small percentage of people who chose Mage, and boy, when you have Ice Barrage going at rapid speed, you became a god in that game.
Yeah. Speaking of that, actually, they made some changes to a number of NPCs out there, specifically demonic ones. They say, well, not many of you use Demon Pain spells. There are a handful of places where people might feel this bug fax impacts them, so they have compensated by reducing the magic defense for Kirill, Sitzeroth, Skotizo, the Demonic Gorillas, and Cerberus. And it's quite substantive, because if you look at the Demonic Gorillas, they've had their magic defense reduced from 50 to 20.
Yeah, that's actually pretty big.
That's a big one. But the other ones aren't too big. Kirill, 130 to 80. Skotizo from 130 to 80. And Cerberus from 100 to 65. But the biggest one there is definitely the
pretty significant. I mean, it's like you're going to be hitting twice as much with those.
Yeah, and you know how much of a Bane accuracy is in the game.
Oh, it's huge. So. Yeah, missing and splashing magic sucks.
Yeah. But I want to get into the landmine of the week. We moved from Poll 83 to Poll 84. Mm-hmm. Poll 84 asked about stackable clues.
Yep.
Are you much of a clue scroll person?
I am very much a clue scroll person. I love doing treasure trails because they're super fun and they take me all over RuneScape and stuff, and oftentimes I find stuff that I've forgotten exists.
What if I told you you could have a stack of clue scrolls in your inventory plus one active one?
Like in leagues and in RuneScape 3?
like in leagues. Like in leagues. Would you vote yes to that?
Heck yeah.
Okay.
I hate it when, like, I have a hard clue scroll in my bank right now because I don't want to do it because it's a wilderness clue, and I've missed so many hard clues when I'm fighting abyssal demons.
Now, that's one aspect of the update. The other one is that they are adding, or were potentially considering adding skip tokens, puzzle skip tokens, similarly to what RS3 has. These would have been a reward space for clues. They would have been sellable on the GE.
Oh.
What would your answer have been to this one?
Here's the thing. I like the idea of skip tokens, but I do not like the idea of them being purchasable on the GE.
Okay.
I think it's something that you yourself should earn for proactively doing a lot of clue scrolls as opposed to just some random noob buying 1 million skip tokens and just skipping all the clues and making bank.
And see, that's the thing. They say these would act as a tradable resource that give players more agency in clue solving. It wouldn't be a free pass, but it would also be an extra reward space, something valuable for both clue hunters and those looking to trade. And the entire aspect of these two questions, of leaning into both the stackable nature of the clues and the skip tokens, was completely axed from this poll because it was seen as though there should have been some consultation with the community on this. And, you know, it appears again that this is something that the community does not want, so they just short-circuited the poll and ended it.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on that, on the community angle of this?
Well, I think initially the whole reason for the stackable clues and stuff like that was to prevent people from what they call clue juggling, where you get a clue scroll, then you just drop it on the ground, and then when you get another one, then you have like multiple different clues and stuff. And so you basically can skip a bad step from one clue by doing the next one because clue steps basically carry on. So you could do 2 steps on one clue and then 3 steps on the other clue, and that'll do a 5-step clue.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, it's like basically that the whole point of that is to mitigate clue steps that you either could not do or really, really did not want to do, like it would lead you into wilderness or something like that. You'll see one big example is, I don't know if you ever watched Settled's series on YouTube, but he created a character that's Mauritania locked called Swampletics, and he did this whole campaign where he did a medium clue scroll all entirely in Mauritania, despite there only being like 7 steps possible in Mauritania. He had to stay up for like hours on end. Like he stayed up, I think, for like 48 hours at one point, just getting multiple medium clue scrolls to guarantee a casket. And so I think that's where that kind of whole update where the clue scroll would linger for an hour on the ground came from.
Yeah, and
very impactful series.
And see, that's the thing. I feel like that has become, in many ways, that sort of gameplay a meta in its own right, and I think that might be influencing why something like the stackable clues is such a an affront to how the community sees their game, which is just outright mind-boggling to me. So there is that angle on it, but they even went as so far to make the stacking through the scroll boxes that they would have added a little bit less impactful than the natural way of doing it, because if you completed X marks the spot, you'll start receiving scroll boxes instead of regular clue scrolls. Clue scrolls,
got it.
Yep. And if you haven't,
clues are a lot more funner.
And if you haven't completed that, you'll just get normal clue scrolls instead. You'll be able to hold up a maximum of 5 scroll boxes or 4 and 1 clue scroll. Geodes, bottles, and bird's nest, those will now give scroll boxes instead of loose clues, and you'll be able to increase your stackability on this by defeating the mimic. Each one increases your clue scroll stack cap by 1 across all tiers. So with that, you are at most able to hold 100 beginner, 200 easy, 250 medium, 150 hard, 150 elite, and 75 master clues. And
what?
Yeah, those are the caps that you're able to increase to.
Those aren't the caps. Those are the number of clues you have to do in order to unlock the cap.
Oh, I'm sorry. I read that wrong.
Is 5.
Okay. When you get to all of this, I see that at the very beginning of it is that if you don't want your things stacked, and this is, again, if this was to come into game as it was, isn't the answer then just don't complete X marks the spot? I realize that's a bit of an early quest.
Well, a lot of people are already going to have the quest completed, so if it was toggleable, like if you could talk to Redbeard Frank, then toggle them, then that would be nice. People don't want that.
I guess not. Here's the other thing, Alex.
What's that? You say that like I did something wrong.
No. What I'm pointing to is that there was a talk at one of the RuneFest Q&As, and I think it was Madaiza who said this, is that Jagex needs to become more comfortable with letting polls fail.
Really?
The question I have is that maybe this should have been pulled, and maybe they should have just let it fail. Or the other thing that I'm thinking is that there would have been enough of the majority part of the community to push this through and get this beyond 70%, that there would have been concern that the Clue Scroll community would have been upset had this passed. And other people. But I guess
what I'm wondering is,
but I guess we'll never know now because it's not going to be pulled, right?
Well, here's the thing: is that they had already kind of fixed that issue with the hour-long Clue Scroll dropping thing like that, and again, Clue Scroll juggling kind of became a meta instead. It kind of became its own gameplay mechanic where you could effectively, quote unquote, skip bad Clue Scroll steps by doing.
So is that what
it
like comes down to? In effect, ending that sort of meta gameplay mechanic.
It's not necessarily ending that mechanic. It's more like I'm wondering why did they deem that mechanic needed to be ended? Like, again, Clue Scroll juggling is a thing that players do if they want to, or they just do the Clue Scrolls. It's if they get them, they just do it right away, and if they go to Wilderness, so be it. They've got a loadout for that, no problem. That's what I do usually. And if I do not feel like going to the Wilderness and I do stack up clues when fighting enemies, then by all means I'll do that too. Just whenever it's needed. I just don't understand why they feel like clues need to have that meta removed and stuff. Like, why do we need to have both stackable clues and skips, which is
so you
like
would
two
have
solutions
so
to
you
the
would
same
have voted
problem.
you would have voted no then on Q1 at least then.
I would have voted no to one of them, one of the two.
Okay.
I would have thought about because they both solve basically the exact same problem. Is that if you don't not doing a clue scroll is because of the step, you'd use a skip token for that, or you would have a stackable clue, and then if you have a bad step, you could just drop that clue and do the next one. It's like they're both answering the same problem, basically.
I appreciate that explanation on that in terms of how the clue juggling fits in with that, because I was just looking at this from a purely QL perspective. And this is true, again, for me across both versions of RS, in that I don't do enough clue scrolls for stacking to typically be a problem. I don't do enough clue scrolls for skipping steps to be a problem for me. So I was looking at it purely from the QOL lens, mainly that was presented in this news post. So if you had to pick one or both, which of these would you be voting yes to, or which of these would you be voting no to between stacking
I would
and
vote for
skip tokens?
That's actually, I'm thinking about this right now, and I think I would actually vote yes to the skip tokens and no to the stackable clues.
Interesting.
Because again, the whole point of the stackable of the clue juggling is again to skip steps that you cannot or do not want to do.
Right.
So the skip tokens basically fix that so that you can just skip those steps and just get the clue done and over with, and then return to what you're doing.
And again, this is very revealing because I didn't see the issue with the stackable clues, and I did see the issue that people had with the skip tokens, and that they felt like maybe this is something that's taking too much of a page from the way clues are done in RS3, and it's part of, I guess, the clue scroll experience here. And I mean, it says so in the news post, right? It says by introducing clue skip tokens, we're providing an alternate to juggling while also adding a new tradable reward to clues. Whether you're an Iron Man looking for smoother clue experience or a merchant eyeing new profit opportunities, these tokens should bring both convenience and value to clue scrolls. And I think that aspect of it is probably what set people off in the wrong direction, and that it effectively just made certain clue scrolls steps kind of trivial with that. But
Yeah, again, I don't think that the skip tokens should be tradable. I think that like you earn like a couple of them after a couple clue scrolls, and then you're able to skip like one or two steps, basically almost at all times. And it's like there's only the one or two steps that you do need to skip, so it would actually make the clue scroll line just a lot more streamlined if you have just the clue skips that you get yourself.
right. Do you use the clue helper in Runelight when you do clues?
Oh yeah.
Now this might seem a bit like a question out of left field, and listeners can come on this adventure if they like.
Hmm?
What's the difference between using the clue helper in Runelight and using a skip token? Because I mean, you can have the Runelight client effectively solve the clue for you. You just got to push the buttons and do it that much quicker. What's the difference between that and skip token?
Well, the thing is, when you do a lot of clue scrolls, all the steps and stuff like that you become familiar with. Like, you know pretty much where to go. You see a coordinate, you're like, oh, I know where that is. It's over there and stuff. And all you're doing with the Runelight there, is you're basically kind of skipping the process of having to memorize just all the locations of all the different clues and stuff. And then basically going to the locations. Like once you know where to go, then it just streamlines the clue scroll so you can just get it done really quick, as opposed to having to jump on the Wikipedia and look up the step if you need to, or trying to figure it out yourself through like your own series of notes and stuff. Because people aren't usually just going to go do a clue scroll and like, okay, what's going on here? Like they open up a clue scroll and they spend like 15 minutes trying to figure out the riddle and stuff. They're not going to do that every time. They're going to, once they solve it, they're going to like remember it or take note of it or something like that if they want to do more clue scrolls in the future. If it was like a one-time deal, then yeah, you'd read the clues, try to figure it out, and then after the puzzle's solved, then that's it, the puzzle's solved.
So your point then
over and over again
is basically then that even with the Runelight client, you're still exposed to the clue and you still need to push the buttons. It's not just a matter of, jumping over that.
You have to go to the location, you have to solve the puzzle and stuff, you have to put in the effort to get the clues and stuff done. Having a skip token, you're like, I don't want to do that step. It's too far away. I have to switch my gear. I don't want to do that. Skip. Okay, much better clue scroll. I'll walk over here.
Okay. I want to address one more kind of meta level issue with these two poll questions, and that when it comes, we have this thing called the polling charter, right? Which is a relatively, new addition to the point that I remember when it was added to the game. And the polling charter is interesting in terms of the thing about, it says what we will poll. It's high-level designs and concepts for new content, new rewards, and changes to existing content that will have a significant impact on players, such as new content or areas, content or area expansions, reworks to existing content and areas, and changes that will significantly impact the existing meta. Which I think these two polls fall into that last bullet point that I read out. Which, okay, you can poll that one, and that should be no problem there. And this goes back to my big question. If a significant portion of the community is against this update, why not poll it and let it fail? Or is there a concern from the community management side that this will pass and they'll have an even bigger fire on their hands if it passes? That's what I'm wondering here. And that's what my big concern is with this. Because like I said, I don't do too many clue scrolls, but it worries me based on how the team is conducting polls here. That's what my big question is that should this have been let to fail, or was there a concern internally that this would pass and they'd have a bigger fire on their hands? What do you think?
I think we might be just off the root problem a little bit here, because it feels as though like we're expecting Jagex to pull basically every little update that they provide to us, basically. It's like,
right, and that goes back to the farming stuff, right?
And stuff like that. Right. And in doing so, it's like the game is kind of being shaped to the community's whims and desires
Yeah.
and stuff. And as I've said before, the community is not 100% accurate. You know, they're like there's trolls, there's crazy people out there, and there's people who just do not care and stuff. And by making the game tailored to sort of our desired experience, they're kind of no longer tailoring the game to their own desires. Like RuneScape was initially like a vision from the Gower brothers, and that's how they initially made the game. They didn't care too much about what the community wanted. They did sort of their own thing and got the feedback, and they incorporated things based off that feedback. They didn't have to ask permission to make things in the game. They didn't have to
ask permission to move
people wanted
NPCs.
The leprechauns to not move around as much in the fear that a fire would be started if the person cannot get to the gardener 2 tiles earlier, you know?
Right, and I guess that's the thing that I'm trying to get to, is that does the polling charter need an update to accommodate things that are classed as the meta, whether they might be moving an NPC or whether they might be changing the way clue scrolls work?
And again, I think it's the opposite. They're polling too much, I think. They're giving us so many options and stuff. Like, I don't want to vote. I don't want to have to vote for like, if their gardeners are moving around stuff. That's not a very big update. That's not something I feel like I need to actually say, you know what, that would be an awesome thing. It would change my life forever if gardeners did not move around so much. I'm not. Like, again, I would have defaulted just saying yes, get it over with, because it's such an inconsequential poll to me that I would skip over it. And that's what I think, is that you should not have to poll that kind of thing, because you're not going to get good results for that. People are just going to go whatever, vote yes or whatever. Just, do it. And then if there's a backlash, then revise it,
Yeah. And
there's not going to be a backlash for wander range for most NPCs unless you're
there was apparently, according to parts of Discord and Reddit.
Well, those are just the trolls. Those are just the people who want to make a big deal of nothing, Ignore those guys.
Meanwhile, on the What Won't We Poll section, that includes things like game modes, temporary events, asset visuals, and graphical enhancements, bug fixes, small QOL enhancements. Here's what they list as small QOL enhancements. You tell me if the leprechauns and whatnot fit into this category. Toggleable wiki orb added to the minimap, allowing warning messages to be dismissed permanently, additional options in the settings menu, moving a tree or plant that obstructs pathing for no reason, and make all options in relevant menus.
Well, leprechauns are green, so are trees.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the leprechauns don't even move at all. I mean, they're just in the they're usually just in one place.
Yeah, amongst other things, future changes to the polling system, integrity and balance changes, the new player experience, pricing changes, accessibility and diversity changes, and smaller changes. I'm betting that they felt that the leprechauns fell into the smaller changes.
Probably, yeah.
But
yeah, again, like they're pulling on too much stuff. They're like diluting the more important stuff with all this random stuff that honestly the majority of us don't care too much about.
Yeah, and like my big thing is that I feel like, yeah, sure, pull the farming leprechaun changes. It's a little poll. It's going to pass probably 90% plus yes. But then when it comes to the clue scroll stuff, to get back to that, pull it and let it fail, or is there a concern that you're going to pass this and you're going to have the clue community in a tizzy, right? I think that's what the issue is at the end of the day. But I feel like I've said enough on this. I've got my point out. Is there anything else you want to add on the stackable clue saga here?
Well, I mean, they're basically trying to change it so that it behaves a lot more like RuneScape 3, which is tried and true. Like, nobody's really complaining about the system there.
And there is that out there. Maybe that's why.
Like, they've already done it, basically. It's happened before, and they've got the reviews and stuff, and people liked it, and so they figured, you know what, let's just do the exact same thing in OSRS, and then I'm sure nothing bad will happen.
And people didn't like it because it disrupted a meta.
Pretty much. It's like adding salt to French fries to make them taste better, and then you add salt to ice cream to make it taste better, It's like the same steps. It should work.
Which obviously, in the case of that one, adding salt to ice cream does not work.
Actually, it does. Sometimes if you have a caramel ice cream, you add a little bit of salt to it. It's actually really nice.
Okay.
Like, that's the thing, is that people think it won't work, but in some situations it will.
And maybe that's the thing. Maybe people just need to let these things go forward. And I think that's why it would have been. I think it would have been revealing to pull these two clue changes.
It's like the people are cherishing their caramel ice cream way too much. They don't realize just how much of a difference just adding a little bit of salt makes.
Yeah, it's like it's also like sugar on popcorn if you got the same sort of thing set up there in terms.
Well, that's a sin in by itself, and I hate you for that.
Well, kettle corn, right? Because you can have a sweet, or you can have a salty kettle corn, or a combination of both, right? So
yeah, you could do that. Though I personally like it. I prefer garlic butter on my popcorn.
Interesting. I've never thought of doing that.
It's super good. Half and half garlic butter and olive oil poured on popcorn with some salt. It's so good, and it's actually really good for you too because the olive oil is really good for your internals.
Okay. We'll talk about how to make the garlic butter later, or which one you buy, because that does sound interesting to me.
I mean, I usually just buy the garlic butter at the store. Like they have those special like garlic sticks of butter, the green ones.
Okay.
Anyways,
yes. Snacks aside, the Abyssal Sire. I have not fought this because I don't have the Slayer level associated with it. They are considering a number of questions for Sire. First one, to make it targetable during its transition phase. Is this
so how the Sire works? It's got like sort of two transitions. It's got like three phases. The first phase, you have to basically stun it and go around shooting its sort of like shoot. It's got a bunch of those that you have to shoot, and then that basically makes the boss itself fightable. It goes into the second phase, and then and then in doing so, like he breaks out of his sort of chrysalis and just kind of walks over to you, and then starts fighting you. That basically gives you a chance to sort of like switch your gear up and get ready, because usually you use like a long range method to take out the nodes, but fighting him, you want to use like a short range method because he's weaker to melee.
Okay. And then
having that transition phase there is nice because you can kind of like take your time, get your gear all set up and get your prayers all set, and then you're ready to go.
I wonder if this one's going to pass then.
It might, because like I think what the concept is that it's attackable during its transition, but it only does like half damage. It's like if you get everything ready, you can do just a little bit of extra damage while he's moving around.
And that's what they say. They don't want to necessarily force people to sit and wait.
Yeah, indeed. So it's optional at best. Like it's an optional, just a little bit of extra damage there. It's not going to really affect the phasing and stuff. It's just going to maybe speed the kill up by like 1 or 2 hits, basically.
Okay. The next one, should the Abyssal Sire's speed be increased to match a player's run speed and reduce downtime between mechanics?
I want to say, I mean, that's a hard one for me because like I just fought the guy and I got perfect Sire like an hour ago, so I'm trying to think about this one.
If that would make it harder or make it easier for you.
Like because again, I like the transitions because they give me a moment to kind of just get myself set up for that phase, because you want sort of a different layout for each phase. Like when he goes, like I talked about when he comes out of his chrysalis, but when he goes to the middle, like he no longer attacks you. His minions and pools of death do. So basically, I have to switch my prayer up, and I have to position myself and get ready to do some jumping around and stuff.
Yeah, they say they say they want to do this because the movement feels tedious and sluggish. So that's why they feel bringing it up to the player's run speed and reducing downtime to mechanics would make it flow easier.
The thing is, I'm a casual gamer, and like I like having that little extra time to kind of get ready and stuff. And even with the transition stuff, I do still forget to switch my prayer to range sometimes, which doesn't matter too much. Just the minions do a little bit more damage, but I'm wearing just this CR armor, so it's
okay.
Not too
nice. And then finally, should we shorten the lung phase on Abyssal Sire by increasing the minimum hit on vents to 50% and making Demon Bane weapons able to one-shot them?
That one's interesting because it's my least favorite phase because you have to keep on stunning the guide and hitting the thing. It's going to make one of the particular achievements a lot easier, I think. But
yeah, and their goal with this is to make end game setups more easily able to one phase them.
Yeah.
So
and Demon Bane weapons, like the best ones you get them from Tormented Demons. You get them from the Twisted Synapse, and you can apply that to Arclight, or you actually use it to make a bow or a Demon Bane staff.
Yeah, and you see,
so like at that point,
the thing is that I feel like when Demon Bane weapons came out, everybody was looking for the niche for them about where they'd be best, and maybe this is this is one of those areas.
Supposedly the bow is exceptionally good at Krill, so if you ever want to fight that guy, use
that
the
makes
bow.
sense. That makes sense.
On special attack, which is nice, so it just holds the guy in place and you just shoot the fudge out of him.
So the sense that I'm getting is that these changes are, in many ways, quality of life towards improving the boss fight, and the bulk of them might go through based on what you've said and what your experiences have been when you fought Sire.
Yep. The thing is that, like, the first two, like making the Sire run and being able to attack him during a transition phase, they kind of cancel each other out, because when he runs, then you kind of lose that transition time.
Right.
To switch your gear up and stuff like that, and you're not going to get another hit on him unless you're really, really good.
Uh-huh.
So it's more tailored for higher level players, but it's going to make it much harder for, like, people who are starting off. It's going to make it much harder for them to figure out how that works. So I would not make. I would let set it so that you could attack the Sire while he's transitioning, but I would not make him run.
Okay. All right.
It's like it'll reward the higher level players, and it will not deter the lower level players.
Yeah, and I guess with that, we're through the bounds of what was controversial in this poll. This is, of course, what this poll will open up on, and we'll just have to wait and see where everything lands for it. Have you done much Zulrah?
Funny enough, I've done a little bit of Zulrah, not too much though. I think I have like maybe 3 kill counts on me, and I immediately just kind of got it. I kind of over-prepared a little bit to try to get it done for my Western RuneScape diary, my Western Kanaran diary, whatever that is.
I spent a great deal of time.
You need to kill Zulrah for the hard Kanaran diary.
Yeah, I spent a great deal of time at Zulrah in Leagues 4, to the point where it was actually surprisingly one of the bosses that I was able to do. And this poll is based off of the stats and what they saw in Raging Echoes. They now are looking for the blessing to make a potential change to allow halberd distance attacks to damage Zulrah. Because right now, Zulrah can't be damaged with melee at all. So, the question is, does melee, if you allowed halberds there, would that outcompete with mage or range? Would melee actually be useful? And they say ultimately it's about offering players a fun alternative and giving you more ways to approach Zulrah. While it's not always meant to replace existing strategies, it would be a fresh option for those who want to experiment or switch things up.
I don't think it'll affect too many players, because like mage and range just by themselves, being able to shoot Zulrah from basically across the stage, because there's a lot of like full like stage effective mechanics, like the gas cloud, for instance. You're forced to one end of the stage, and if you're forced around and stuff, you have to move behind pillars and stuff. The halberd is going to just completely deter you.
And let's also not forget about Zulrah's fire elemental weakness now, too.
Yeah, totally.
So
ultimately, all being able to do what halberd is going to do is going to basically give people bragging rights if they can just halberd only Zulrah. Like, they're going to make videos and stuff of them halberd only Zulrah and showing off their skills and stuff.
Right, and
the casual player is not going to use a halberd.
Wouldn't this allow for a crazy setup with your Justiciar armor and like a Nox or Crystal Halberd?
Possibly.
As something you could lean into, right? Because I don't think you would run Justiciar there using Magicka range. That would be horrible in terms of the accuracy penalty.
Yeah, definitely not.
So,
like melee his melee attack is dodgeable. You can just walk away from it. Everything else is ranged and magic. So Justiciar, like, it'll help with the range stuff, but not the mage.
Right.
Be praying anyways. And Zulrah's got such a high accuracy anyways that armor really does not matter there. It's being able to match the prayers.
Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know what I would vote on this one. I would maybe lean towards no on this, just to kind of keep it the way it is, based on my experience.
I'd honestly say yes, because again, it's like one of those things that are completely inconsequential to me, and I would vote yes just because, you know, maybe somebody out there wants to do a halberd only Zulrah just for the clout, and so like I don't want to disable that, so I would say yes. Okay.
Moving on to a piece of content that I know you have spent some time at.
Literally 100 times.
Not So Challenge Mode Chambers, they're calling it. What this would be a new toggle in the Chambers of Xerix to allow a challenge mode style layout for regular Chambers of Xerix raids. And with this, all rooms would appear in the same predictable order, just like in challenge mode, while the bosses would still scale to the regular Chambers of Xeric difficulty. There would be no challenge mode specific rewards or increased HP, and this would offer a consistent layout to those who prefer it. I have not done any raids in OS. Where do we stand on this? And again, folks, remember Alex said he's the casual gamer.
Yep, I'm a casual gamer, and I did the challenge mode Chambers of Xeric literally 100 times on leagues because I just couldn't get that gosh darn ancestral rope top drop. I got it at my 95th purple chest.
Right, and at that point, just carry on to 100, right?
Yeah, it was supposed to be a 1 in 22 drop.
On leagues.
Yeah, on leagues. When you get a purple, purple chests are guaranteed when you do challenge mode. So
yeah,
when you get a purple chest, then it's like even on regular, it's 1 in 22.
Oh my god, you went really dry there.
I went incredibly dry there. I got like 3 of every other kind of robe and stuff. I got so many parchments. I've got like 3 Kodai wands from that even, and those are like 1 in 50.
Christ.
No rope top. I started calling it the secondhand T-shirt that has yet to be laundered. Like getting Ohm's T-shirt.
So should this be added for consistent layouts?
I personally think so. I really think so, because it'll help people kind of like gives it like another mode to kind of play with and stuff, and it also kind of helps people learn how to do challenge mode by kind of getting the layout and learning like which bosses come after which stuff.
And then when they do actual challenge mode, they can focus on just the increased stats that they have to deal with.
Indeed. And there's a couple of extra mechanics in challenge mode, I believe, as well, so you got to watch out for that.
Right, and that's what they say. This will be especially helpful for newer players who want to practice challenge mode procedure and familiarize themselves with the timing, preparation, and strategy without the stakes of the full challenge mode raid.
Definitely. And believe it or not, regular mode Chambers is soloable. It's just really hard.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I know you spent a good deal of time in there in the most recent league. Do you do it much? Have you done it much in the main game?
Never done it in regular game. I've never done it. It's the only task I need for my Elite Corin diary right now, and I'm trying my darndest to will myself to just do it.
I mean, if you get a good team together.
I'm on the redo raids for them, and basically I'm just kind of keeping an eye for when they do like a mass run through, just to kind of learn a run through. And usually that happens in the middle of when I'm working. So I cannot stop my job to do that. So I'm
you need to get Clan Quest involved in this, like you did in the league.
Yeah, I know a few of the guys. Do it. Like Grim, I think he does it a couple times. Does it?
Yeah, but okay. So that's another easy question. I thought that one might be a little bit more difficult, but that was an easy question. And then the questions about adding a bunch of agility shortcuts. An agility shortcut to scale the wall at Castle Draken. That would be one way. I think we know why we want that one for
one
clue
particular
scrolls.
Master Clue Scroll
yes.
step, yeah.
Yes, I saw that when I was up there doing Darkness of Hallowale.
Yep, it's like right at the end of this really long stretch of wall and stuff. Like you literally need energy potions to make the distance.
Yeah. Should we allow access to the Varrock Castle Garden through an agility shortcut after completing Garden of Tranquility?
I mean, if you want the white fruits, which just give you a little bit of an energy boost, it's not super necessary, but for like earlier players, it might be nice. So, as long as it's a lower level agility shortcut, that
should players be allowed to travel in both directions in Proudspire using an agility shortcut?
Where? Sorry,
Proudspire, which is the largest mountain in Varlamore. That big mountain there.
Oh, that. Oh, that. Okay, I know
so
what you're talking about.
That would be adding a shortcut there to let you go in both directions.
Got it. I mean, I don't go there too often myself, so it wouldn't affect me too much. But I mean, agility shortcut's always nice.
Yeah. So. Fossil Island Tower to the small island for quicker travel.
Now, I'm envisioning this one to be a zip line, like it's like be like a rope or something, and you ride the zip line all the way down. That would be cool.
Do that involving.
I don't know how else you'd do it aside from paragliding or just doing a really, really big leap of faith and landing face first on the sandbank. I mean,
Um,
I'll take either one, but honestly, the zip line I think would be the most epic and awesome version of that. So I'm hoping that they do that one.
and then 2 new agility shortcuts in the Mauritania Slayer Tower to improve navigation. Yes, please on that one.
That would be nice, yeah.
Yeah. And
That's
finally,
super necessary, but still, yeah, it would be nice.
and finally, the biggest one that I want to talk about, and perhaps one of the most consequential ones here. Should they allow people to edit offers live on the Grand Exchange? Yes, yes, yes. This is one of the big things I miss from RS3 when interacting with the GE. But, I mean, given our past track record earlier in this episode, maybe this will be shot down because, it's too much like RS3.
Is it really necessary? Is this one really necessary? Because
yes,
if you
it's a
mess
quality
up,
of life feature. I mean, it prevents you from having to hit that X and relist or rebuy with the new quantity or price. And, people might be concerned about this. The idea behind it is that this will still fully cancel and resubmit your offer in the background, and your position in the purchase and sale queue will be updated accordingly. But this will all happen automatically. So it's not as though you maintain your position in the queue. It's effectively just hiding all the details for you.
I don't know why this is necessary, because if something is not usually the only reason I would change something is if it's not selling, because the prices had fluctuated. In that case, what I would do is I would cancel it, take the items back, and then pop it open again and see what the new value is. And then if I determine that I want to sell it at this rate, then I would relist it. And if I don't, then I wouldn't.
But that's what
editing
GE
it kind of
websites
feels like
are
it
for.
takes that step away.
That's what GE websites are for in terms of looking at the price.
Sorry for being casual.
Okay. And then finally, a fair
experience. That's how it would affect me. And I personally, I would say no to this one, because it's, again, it wouldn't affect me too much because, again, super casual and stuff. But also, I feel like it would kind of take the flow away from me a little bit.
Okay. And then finally, a fairer rate for Bonfire XP. They say bonfires exist as a relaxed way to train fire making, but in reality, they're rarely used. So with this,
True.
They'd be adjusting bonfires so they grant the same XP per log as manually lighting fires, while still keeping their overall XP per hour lower than individual log burning.
Because it's slower.
Yes.
So it's one of those cases of... And I personally, I like this one because there's a lot of skills. They have AFK methods, and they have tick manipulation methods, which make them faster. Woodcutting is a really good example for that, where you can tick manipulate teaks and get extremely fast experience at the cost of you focusing hardcore on rhythm clicking and stuff, as opposed to just walking up to the magic trees in the woodcutting guild and just clicking on them and just doing something else. So having this for fire making would be really nice, because you could just click, set, and forget, and just do whatever while you get your experience. And let's face it, if you want fire making experience, you're doing winter talk.
Yeah, exactly. That was going to be my point, is that right now fire making is either lined fire making if you don't want to do winter dot, or winter dot otherwise for XP. And when it comes to the lean back fire making training methods out there, they are already quite bad. And like they say, this would in effect still be lower XP than line fire making. And it says so in the poll question, is that the bonfire
XP... It wouldn't
XP,
be less experience per log.
Right. They're keeping that the same, but it's overall overall less experience per hour than doing line fire making. Which is fair because you're leaning.
It's like making cannonballs as opposed to steel plate.
Right. And the poll question reads, should bonfire XP be adjusted to match the same XP per log ratio as manually lighting logs, while ensuring that it still results in a lower XP per hour rate compared to lighting them individually?
100% yes. I love having AFK methods while I do other stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like it's backwards day when it comes to this poll 84 stuff here, in that this one's not going to pass, but a lot of the other, random things we talked about earlier are going to pass, just given our experience in terms of what we've heard on the stackable clues and the farming stuff.
Yep. And everything I told about how the community works.
So,
which I've reiterated several times.
But that's pretty much it. That brings us to the end of the prepared remarks for this week. Anything else before you go, or before we go?
I don't know. Want me to say something crazy?
Yeah.
Banana cream pie.
Okay. There you go. Right. let us know what you guys think, folks. Let us know if we're off our rockers, if you agree with us, if the community is wrong, if the way polls are done need to be reconsidered to not poll every little thing like Alex was saying earlier. Let us know what you think.
And remember, the community is always wrong.
Oh, yeah, those are fighting words in this community. But in any case, if you want the next episode delivered automatically to you when it arrives, update.show/OS. You can subscribe there. All the major podcast listening services. Also, of course, YouTube at youtube.com/@OSRS update. But thanks, Alex, for being here. Good catching up with you again and bringing you to the old school side of OSRS update.
Well, thank you for having me. Stay safe, everyone, and buy local.
Indeedy dums. All right, then. We'll see you guys next week for another episode of OSRS Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Here's Cat in the Ears.